In this demonstration video, we're going to look at an example integration of Splunk Enterprise and Gluware's intelligent network automation. Splunk Enterprise is a powerful software that enables the ingestion and collection of large volumes of real-time and historical data from various sources. It's known as a security information and event management system. Splunk enables log management, provides operational intelligence, and business analytics. With that data it collects, users are able to search the data, monitor for events, analyze what's happening in the network, and alert and integrate with third-party systems, which is what we're going to focus on this demonstration. Gluware Intelligent Network Automation provides a suite of applications to provide network automation. The differentiation is that this automation is intelligent. It's data model driven and declarative, having a two-way conversation with the network devices to understand the exact configuration state they're in and provision changes necessary to put those devices in the desired state when making config changes. It provides a purpose-built suite of applications that provide network discovery and device discovery, OS management, drift detection, configuration and state audits, configuration management, topology for site diagrams, and no-code process automation called Network RPA, which we're going to be using in this demonstration. So Gluware easily automates large and complex multi-vendor networks. So moving on to what we're going to focus on in this conversation is that when you look at the lowest layer of this diagram here, you have the network infrastructure. It's made up of your WAN, your data center, your campus, so your multi-domain infrastructure that is typically multi-vendor as well. So the network infrastructure is complex. Across the top, you have categories of management and monitoring products like ITSMs and config management databases, monitoring, auditing, logging, alerting, all the things that you're trying to do to help you manage the network. And in the middle is where Gluware sits, which is in the automation and orchestration layer. So Gluware provides native automation as well as integrates with products like Ansible and StackStorm for expanded use cases with those third-party systems. Enterprises are challenged by the complexity and by introducing automation to help integrate and also automate process automation with the management layer is where the value of automation and orchestration really benefits end users to automate many of those processes for optimized management and efficiency. With the goals of enhancing enterprise security posture, ensuring compliance, reducing time to respond to incidents, as well as improving the overall efficiency of network operations and security operations, let's take a quick look at how Gluware Intelligent Network Automation can be integrated with both Splunk Enterprise and Splunk SOAR. IT teams use Splunk Enterprise to collect a broad array of server, storage, and networking events and logging. Using Splunk SOAR, enterprises collect security-specific information and create predetermined orchestrated and automated responses through building playbooks with the required actions. Using lightweight API integration with alerting and events from Splunk Enterprise and playbook tasks in Splunk SOAR, Gluware can provide automation and orchestration that helps unify the NetOps and SecOps response by providing network changes that are part of the security response, execute drift, monitoring, and audits of both config and operational state, run troubleshooting and diagnostic assessments about the network health, and automate change management that can include OS and config changes. In the demo we're going to look at in this use case, we're going to be using Splunk as the logging and event management system. And with that, we're going to configure the infrastructure, in this case, a Cisco switch, to send Syslog events up to the Splunk logging service. Within Splunk, then, we're going to be able to look at those logging events and also create alerts or actions to actually create a response when something occurs in the network. So with that, we're going to configure an alert action to trigger Gluware. And in Gluware, we're going to be building a workflow. So it's an automated sequence of steps and events that are going to occur when that trigger it runs. And then Gluware is going to talk to the network and run that automated response. So again, what we're looking at here is where you can take alerts and monitoring that you're already doing with Splunk and actually turn it into actions on the network to take action when you need to for an automated response. So let's take a look at the demonstration. So here we are in Splunk Enterprise, and one of the first steps you'll have to do is add data or add sources of data that are feeding the Splunk platform. So to do that, in this case, we're going to use an application. So I'll click on Find More Apps, and we're going to use a Cisco app. I'll type Cisco, type Enter, and we're going to use the Cisco Networking add-on for Splunk Enterprise. So what this does is it pre-prepares the Splunk system to ingest data from Cisco networks. In this case, we're going to be ingesting Syslog messages. So you can see that's already installed in the system. So that's there and that's working. So let's go back to the home and let's take a quick look at searching and reporting to see if we are indeed receiving those Syslog messages. So I'll take a quick look at my history of my searches. And I'm going to just look at the add to search and today and hit search. So I can see Splunk is capturing Syslog. This was a test event I did earlier today where I am capturing the type of event that I want to trigger on. So as you saw from the previous diagram in the PowerPoint, Splunk is now ingesting Syslog from the network. This particular switch is configured to log Syslog messages starting at the notification level, and it is sourcing the Syslog messages from this interface, which is IP reachable from my Splunk instance. So that's an important note. And that I am logging to 10.1.25.33 on the default port, which is UDP 514. So you can see this IP address here matches my Splunk server, and that's how that device is sending Syslog, and that Syslog is being captured by Splunk. And so anytime a Syslog event occurs, Splunk will have it, and you can search and see those events occurring. Now comes the next part where we want to actually trigger or set up an alert and an action based on this type of message coming in. So we're going to navigate to Settings and Searches, Reporting, and Alerts. And what you're going to see here is that we have one already built. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this so you can see what's been built. Basically, this is an alert that says anytime this, based on this search, so it's a UDP 512, which is Syslog. The source type is Cisco iOS. And I'm actually looking for a specific type of Syslog message, which is someone has gone into config mode on that device. Basically, the use case here is I want to ensure my network stays compliant and secure. So anytime someone is going into a console, like a CLI, and making a config change, if they are not following the proper procedures, that is going to get checked against, it's going to get drifted against our standard and potentially remediated by Gluware. So what we're looking at here is a response. This is a real-time response, and it's going to happen per result. And in terms of actions for API integration with a third-party product is to run a script. So we're going to click down here in this box, and we are running a script called Gluware_workflow.py. Again, when this type of Syslog message happens, we're going to be triggering this event, and we're going to be running a script. So that's basically all you need to know from the Splunk side. I'm going to cover a little bit more in a minute here, but we're going to go ahead and cancel that. But this event and trigger is up and running. If I say view recent, you can see here when that is run, and I can see this current job is running in a real-time state. I could pause the job or stop it, but this job is up and running to capture that alert and send a trigger, which is going to run a script. So let's go over to the Gluware side. So here we are in Gluware, and as I mentioned, it's a suite of pre-built applications that you would navigate on your left-hand menu here. Here's all the network devices under management with Gluware, and we're going to be testing a particular Cisco Catalyst 3750 switch. That was the one that I already showed you was configured for Syslog, and this is the one we're going to be working with. But the key focus here is we're going to navigate into network RPA and go to the workflow library. And what we've set up here is a workflow. We're going to go ahead and view the workflow. It's in a read-only mode. I could certainly edit it. But this is network RPA, where you have the ability to build process automation with drag and drop. So what you can do is drag and drop in the tasks that you want to accomplish. So we're going to be executing a filter to select specific devices. We're going to be capturing the current configuration of those devices. We're going to be executing a snapshot. So this is a comparison from a predetermined, let's say, good state, or the standard configuration or golden configuration. So we're comparing it against a known state to see if it has changed. So then we have an if operator, and we're saying if config drifted is a no, you proceed down the path, else you take another action. So let's go ahead and look at that action. So if no drift occurred, we just get a notification that this got triggered and run, but there's no action to take. If drift has occurred, we're going to actually take action and re-provision those devices that are affected. So a provisioning activity will rerun the policy that's set up in another application called the config model editor. So we're not going to get deeply into that, but just know that we are managing the configuration, and this will go and look at the configuration state and return it to a known good state, and then we'll also send a notification. So that's basically the process automation or workflow. You could get more complicated with interacting with like ServiceNow or Slack notifications, but this wanted to just kind of keep it pretty straightforward here. Now that you know the process that's going to run upon being triggered, let's go back to the workflow library, and I want to show you how easily it is to call this workflow from a third party using API integration. So here on the workflow view, I just go into view info, and I can see here, if I scroll down a little bit, to run this workflow, I just execute a post operation using this URL. So literally it's a copy and paste of this URL. You do need to authenticate. So in this case, we're using basic auth. I'm going to pass my username and password to authenticate. We're going to execute this with a post. And in the payload of the API call, we're passing in the org ID, which is this particular org. And I could pass in any input parameters. So if I want to feed in variables into this workflow, I could do that as well. We're trying to keep this example a little bit more straightforward and simple, so we don't need to do that. But basically, anything that allows, let's say, easy API integration, it's a copy paste from Gluware to execute that. So now that we know exactly the API call we want to run and automate Gluware, the next recommended step, I would say, is you would go into a program that allows you to test your API calls. So here we are in Postman. And in Postman here, we have copy and pasted that API call, as mentioned. And in the body of the message, we copy and pasted those required parameters. So we also put in the authentication, which is a basic auth. And so from here, you can execute this API call and test it. You can execute a send, which I've already done, and I've made sure my API call is working. Now, to integrate this with Splunk, because in the case of Splunk, to run this API call requires running it from a script. What's a nice component of using a test with Postman is you can actually generate this API call in different code formats. So this, the type of script I'm going to run with integrating in Splunk is a Python script. I just basically say, show me this in a Python script. I'm able to copy this script and integrate it in Splunk. On the Splunk server, when you're doing script integration, Splunk requires you to put your scripts in a specific directory. So if I look at that particular directory, I have a script here. This is called Gluware_workflow.py. So I have this script here. You can see it's highlighted in green because this script has been updated or changed so that it's executable. And I would also recommend you, from the command line here, you can test the script, which I've already done as well. So there are a few steps in getting it set up, but once you have it up and configured, you have your script, you have it set up on the Splunk system, it is ready for integration. Let's go back to Splunk and let's go back to our searching and reporting. And we're going to go back to our search history and we're going to look at those Cisco Syslog messages, add to my search today. And we can see the last one that was run a few hours ago during staging of this test. Now's the fun part. We're going to switch over to the CLI of that switch, and we're going to trigger an event. So what we're doing here is we're on the CLI of the device, and we're going to emulate a user performing an action that's going to trigger a response. So all I have to do is go into config mode. I'm actually not going to change any configs, and I'm going to exit. So by going into config mode, that actually triggers or generates a syslog message. So if I say show logging and I look, right now I have a current log message that was just sent. So again, looking here, if I update my search here, I can see that new event just occurred. So the syslog was sent up to Splunk. And now I can go over to Gluware and look at my workflow activity. And I can see that my workflow is running. So this was a triggered workflow called via that API script that was run as part of an alert here. So let's go ahead and look at the tasks here. If I look at my tasks, what's running here, I am capturing the configuration. I'm comparing those devices, and then I will determine, the script will determine if it needs to remediate or not. In this case, I didn't cause a change of config. So there shouldn't be a remediation action. I don't expect it. But if there was something there, then it would remediate that. So if I look at and I see my Gluware workflow completed with just an email notification that no drift had occurred. And I can see this particular device was the Cisco Catalyst 3750 was the device that was executed on. So that's basically the summary. If we jump back to the PowerPoint here, that's basically the summary of what you just saw, is that your network is configured to send syslog events up to Splunk as a logging server and event manager. Then if you want to take action on any of those events, you can set up alerts and actions. So in this case, we set up an action that is going to call a script that runs the Gluware Network RPA workflow. That Gluware Network RPA workflow then takes an automated response and checks that device to see, did the config change? Do I need to remediate it? So again, this is just one example of many that you could do, pretty much endless in terms of the types of data and information you could ingest from the network into Splunk and the types of responses you could do with Gluware, anything from checking states, changing configuration, pretty much anything that Gluware can do, you can automate that response.